fellow investors, and welcome to another episode of Ritter On Real Estate. We teach you how to passively invest like a pro. Today, my guest is Bryan Underwood. Bryan is the principal of Responsible Residential and the president of Responsible Real Estate, and he's based out of San Diego, California. Hey, Bryan, how you doing today?
Very well. Thanks for having me. Really excited to have this conversation with you and add value where I can.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. I really value your unique experience. I'm excited to dig into some of that. Before we do, let's start at the top and just tell folks a little bit more about you and how you got to be where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. I won't, but I could spend an hour, right, talking about where I came from. I fell in love with real estate. I guess I was about 20, 23, 24. And I was just coming out of a day job, and my day job was selling women's shoes at Nordstrom's, which was a phenomenal job, by the way. Really enjoyed it.
I
But
can't tell if you're
I knew
serious.
no, I'm very serious. I thought it was a great job, but it was a job and it wasn't my career job, right? I had an acquaintance of mine was doing some fun things, like he was building his first condo project in San Diego. He wanted to start these various businesses, and I thought, well, shoot, that's kind of more in the line of maybe a direction I'd like to go. So my first real estate deal is kind of how it all came together for me. And I found a piece of property. This was back in like 2005, 2006 in Santee. And it was a small industrial piece. And I had just learned and just read about, a pro forma, like how do you value real estate? That was kind of really the fundamental question that I was trying to answer was, how does someone buy a building? How do they say it's worth X? Or land is worth Y. And that early on, just that question just kept me going. And I had the small piece of property. And so my mentor of mine, which is about 25 years older than me, he said, gosh, this looks like a great piece. We could build a little spec industrial building here. It's like, fantastic. What do I need to buy in? He said, $50,000. It's like, okay. So I put together a short business plan, sat with a family member, went through the business plan. And because they were very supportive and ignorant, which I'm thankful for, they gave me $50,000. I was very thankful for, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was green, but I had a mentor, right? We ended up selling that property, which wasn't the intent. But 6 months later, we bought it for 150. We sold it for $425,000, and that just got me hooked. Right.
Sure.
I pay back the family member. I give them 50,000. I give them their interest. After all the closing costs, I think I had like $70,000 I put in the bank, and I'm like, all right, I want to know more. Like, I want to know everything about this. Right. So that was kind of like my entry point into real estate. Of course, I'm still learning today, 17 years later. There's a whole host of things that we don't know. And that's one of the things that is fun about real estate. But that really kind of springboarded me into making the phone call to the family business. The family business here in California is A1 self-storage. And I knew that real estate was my thing. I loved everything about it. I loved the people. I loved the process. And so I said, I called my uncle up, and who still runs the company today. And I said, this real estate thing, I want some. I want to know everything about it. And I want to learn. And so I called him up and I said, here's what I've been doing. I really would like a job in acquisitions. I love that hump part. I love just sort of like the people, you got to make contact with somebody. You got to ask them some questions. You got to negotiate a contract, a price. I just loved all that stuff. And so that was not an easy process. It's family. Okay. B, it wasn't, we have a huge family, so they don't welcome me with open arms. I kind of had to fight my way in, which I was fine. I like a little bit of a fight. So long story short is I got into that business and I spent 10 years there. And that's really where I was fortunate enough to hone my skills, and learn soup to nuts, just how to put deals together, how to do contracts, how to manage escrows and all those commitments, property due diligence, entitlements. And in that 10-year period, I was able to deploy $60 million buying land and secured 1.5 million square feet of self-storage entitlements. And in our family business, it kind of started with me sourcing deals, and then it went all the way through. We built them, and then we also managed them. So that was kind of really loaded there, Ken. I went from, first deal to entry into family business, and
Sure.
spent 10 years in self-storage.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's start there. So
Yeah.
you've got a great kind of learning platform in this family business, right? You
Mhm.
joined that and you're into self-storage. And this was what was the time frame here?
So yeah, 7 to 17,
Okay.
07 to 17. Yeah. Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And so, and just when you were in there, I mean, so most of the show, most of what we talk about here is a lot of multifamily talk, but I like to dig
Yeah.
into other asset classes from time to time.
Yeah.
So before we get into like current state, which I know you're doing more multifamily, I'd like to talk about self-storage a little bit.
Yeah.
So what did you learn in that self-storage business? I mean, what do you like about the asset class? And I guess what did you see and experience as you were in the self-storage business for 10 years?
Yeah. Great. So, my entry into self-storage in '07 was a very short, but very good time to be in real estate, right? Then '08 comes around, and, the carpet's kind of pulled under you.
Mhm.
Nevertheless, that was a really, really, really good time to learn, not just in any market when things are a little bit unsettling, but particularly me at my stage of my career. I worked directly under a guy named Tyler Exter. Tyler Exter is still a mentor of mine today. Tyler Exter ran 3 different banks here in San Diego over his career, and he was very savvy at like underwriting and just kind of picking out self-storage opportunities. And he had been doing that for our family business since '92. And so while I got into the family business in '07, and I was actually part of my negotiation with the family was give me a temporary job, and I'll go put together a business plan for what at the time we called storage condominiums. Now, that product is actually back in the market now today, but then it was only a product because financing was available. So I was looking at the storage condominiums, and then of course '08 hits, and the carpet gets pulled from under us. But I got to sit with Tyler Exter for '08, '09. And then I went back to school at University of San Diego, got a master's degree in real estate during this time. And we would sit and just talk about hypotheticals, read articles and talk about it. We talk about property. We talk about everything related to self-storage and what the opportunity might look like. Self-storage is an awesome business. And pre-Great Recession, it was extremely small. Now it was growing, but extremely small. Um, I hardly recognize it today because it has grown so much as an industry. It very much tracks. And I'm always actually really surprised that the fundamentals aren't a premium to apartments. Um, and because it always sort of tracked apartments, but always traded kind of at like a 200-300 basis point spread higher. Now that's come down quite a bit, but self-storage is great in a business of itself. I mean, it's a relatively simple product to build. It's very challenging to build because no city wants a self-storage in their neighborhood. Um, it was always frowned upon because it gives them no employment and no sales tax. Okay,
Mhm.
so no one wanted it. So it was a challenge to get into certain cities and figure out a location that they were acceptable with, and then work through that entitlement process. But in terms of like, you know, what I was looking for, there's a whole host of like checklists that you can probably find online, like what makes a good self-storage location. After you do it for 10 years, I can get on Google, look at a location, kind of click around a little bit, and I can be like, yeah, that's a good location. But after 10 years, you get pretty good at finding sites.
Mhm.
Um, but it was always very challenging to really understand what the true demand was in a marketplace. especially before the Great Recession hit, there just wasn't, no one shared data. So you literally were doing like uh, renting a unit at the public storage down the street and then going and counting unit counts to figure out how many units they had. You were looking at the manager had different color locks on the units if they were vacant, so I could figure out occupancy, right? I mean, it was like before Great Recession, there was no data. Now, because of after the Great Recession, you know, you had the four main food groups of real estate, all the stocks were tanking, and you had this little sort of sub product of industrial being self-storage, and somehow it's up 40%, you know, year over year. And all the analysts in the room are starting to write about self-storage, and every fund manager is saying, oh my gosh, I got to get some of that. So you're just talking, I mean, it's like the industry was night and day pre-Great Recession and after Great Recession. It is crazy how many people are investing and how much capital is available for self-storage today, as opposed to 10 years ago.
And you're seeing, I mean, and I know you've kind of moved on now, but just curious on demand. Do you still see demand out there for self-storage and a need for additional units?
Yeah, I mean, I joke because I'm like a recovering self-storage geek. You know, I mean, I'm a real estate geek, but I just spent so much time in self-storage. It's even today, I'm focused on multifamily development. I still track, I listen, I read about self-storage, and in every cycle, there's sort of this oversupply. And right now there's this chirping of like oversupply in markets. And this guy, Dean Jernigan, who used to run CubeSmart, he used to put out his watch list. This was about 4 years ago before he merged his company, Jernigan Capital. He merged into something else, but he used to put out this watch list of like, these are the cities I wouldn't touch, right? And so those lists are starting to happen again. Like these are the oversupplied markets. It's really hard to look at new demand. So we would basically hone in on a 3-mile radius, and we were building where there was a lot of people. I wanted in a 3-mile radius, I wanted at least 150,000 people in a 3-mile radius. A lot of times in California, you can find 300 plus. That's really good. There's so many markets that are like, I don't have 150,000 people like in my entire county, you know? So we have to understand that we are very focused on coastal California. But I would always joke, I mean, it takes 14 new people in an area for me to build one new unit, right? And I'm trying to build 1,000 of those. Okay. So it takes a lot of people to absorb just one facility, where as opposed to what I'm doing now, I need 2.5 bodies, and I got room for one new dwelling unit. Right. So it's just sort of like the demand and the supply that's out there now in self-storage. I see some headwinds. I'm not tracking specific markets, but I'm also not trying to build it. But you could do a quick Google search and find, you know, what are the troubled cities right now that have some oversupply. You'll find them. You know, in terms of housing, we got lack of housing all over the nation. Pick a city.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah. So let's switch gears. Into housing. That's what you're doing now. So you decided to leave the family business, leave the storage space. You decided to enter into residential real estate. And so tell us what you're doing now, and tell us why you made that shift.
Yeah. The why, there's a little story behind that, but you know, I guess folks just have to understand a little bit of the way Bryan Underwood ticks. Is I'm in the family business. I mean, it's kind of like if you draw it up on paper, it's probably what everybody wishes they had, which is I've earned a spot. I am going to become the next CEO of the family business. I will always make a paycheck. My wealth would always grow. But about 2 years before I decided to leave, I had this real like sort of gut wrenching, like, gosh, this is like, I'm dying as a person. I'm dying professionally. I'm dying spiritually. I'm dying with my family. Like I'm not learning anything. And I sort of tried in the family business to try to bring on challenge opportunities, but it wasn't my company. I was just an employee. Right. So I got to a point where I was okay saying no to being the next CEO and running our $1 billion business, and like sort of stepping aside from, okay, I've got ultimate security with no potential, and I'm going to replace that with, you know, tons of risk, but unlimited potential. And I ended up making that change in 2017. And quite frankly, I didn't have like the exact roadmap of exactly where Bryan Underwood was going to go. All I knew is I needed to do something different to grow spiritually, professionally, personally. And so I started Responsible Real Estate, and I put on my broker hat for the first time. Okay. And I got a couple listings from my network, and they happened to be land for multifamily development. Okay. Now I'm coming from self-storage. It's only logical that Bryan Underwood leaves the family business and starts a self-storage company. But
Mhm.
I thought, like, that's just, there's so many ways to make money in real estate. I had no interest in competing against the family. I have all the interest in the world in growing my skill set, being challenged and taking on new opportunities. And I just love real estate and I love the process. So I decided to put on my broker hat. These two deals is really what exposed me to the opportunity of housing development here in San Diego and other places that I look. There was a CoStar article recently that says San Diego, we can build 110,000 new units tomorrow, and they literally would be absorbed instantly because that's
Mhm.
how much of lack of supply we have in the market. We need to build 15,000 units a year just to keep up with natural growth. Okay, that's just people leaving, people moving, people having babies, right? Just natural growth. Okay, this year is going to be one of the highest, and we're going to build 7,000. We're not even going to touch half of what we should be building. So my eyes just really opened up when I was brokering these things. And I didn't know anything about residential. I knew everything about buying land. I knew everything about building self-storage. I just didn't know anything about residential.
Mhm.
So that's where I just surrounded myself with my network of people who know this product. They know housing, they've built thousands of units. And how do we do this together? Right. Because
Yeah.
everything that I was hearing from them was this demand is huge. Go find a deal. And I'm like, well, I think I know how to do that.
So you're yeah, so I'm curious in, in San Diego. So we obviously, as you said, there's a housing shortage everywhere, and there's kind of there's macro issues that
Mhm.
have created that. But I'm curious within San Diego why maybe particularly there's such a lack of supply to meet the demand.
Yeah. Well, California leaders will kick and scream that we need to build more housing, and some people are doing something about it, and most aren't. But it really has to do with regulation is the challenge. Now, I'm I'm okay investing and participating in places with high regulation because for me, that's high barriers to entry. And if you have the team and know how to get it done, you can create some massive value there. So that's
Mhm.
what I like about building in San Diego. But I mean, I could just take my Santee townhome as an example. Okay. I mean, this was a piece of land that I bought literally in theory teed up, ready to go. I mean, you had construction drawings were 80% complete. The entitlements were done. The people before me that I bought it from spent 3 years, okay, 3 years with the city to permit this project, right? I bought that project 2.5 years ago, and I'm just now, like literally within days, gonna get final from the city. I have fire engineering signed off, planning's next, and building's ready to sign. Okay, so that one project, you're talking about 10 units. If you combine the entire project, took 6 years.
Wow,
It's just
6 years just
crazy.
to be able to get to the point where you can actually start building just because of red tape.
Yeah, I mean everybody cares, which that's just human nature. We all care about what's happening. But not only is it people in your backyard that kick and scream about new housing,
Mhm.
um, it's just the process through the city. Like it, I mean, it's just as soon as you think that you're done, they throw something else at you, and it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, I love it, but it is a constant grind all the way through. So if I could buy a piece of land tomorrow and I can go design a project in 4 months, get building permits in 3 months. So within a 10-month period, let's just say I can break ground and build my project. I could crank out a project, let's just say every 2 years. That's fantastic. But right now you're talking about cranking out projects like every 4 to 5. And that's just, I mean, that's the reason right there. It's
Mhm.
who has, there's not enough people that have $10 million sitting in their bank account that can take the risk and carry the project and have the team to go get projects built. There's just not enough of them.
Interesting. Interesting. So it's that regulation, like you said, high barrier to entry, which if you're able to build something, that's great because it's created such an imbalance of of supply and demand. So now is that your main focus? You're focused on ground up development?
Yeah, so we have two home building brands. You mentioned one of them. So Responsible Residential, that's building build to rent townhome communities and single family home communities. The
Mhm.
second one is Responsible Urban, and that's focused on very high dense infill projects. And so the two examples I can give you is I have 10 build to rent townhomes in a market, Santee, California. It's a submarket of East County in San Diego, and we are just finishing up that project. We're actually in lease up right now. So that's a build to rent community. And then the second one is a project that we have in North Park, which is a very desirable, walkable, like really cool area to live in. And we are about halfway through our construction drawings on 89 market rate apartments.
Gotcha. Very nice. So in working through this process now for the past 5 years, I mean, what are some of your big lessons learned as you know if somebody's going to go out and try to buy land and eventually turn it into an apartment building?
Um, Surround yourself with good people all the time. I mean, go the extra mile to vet whoever you're gonna, be in a business relationship with. And I'm not talking about just your partners. I'm talking about your architect. I'm talking about your general contractor. I'm talking about every single person that touches your project. Know who they are. Know their reputation in the industry. It's going to save you a lot of headache. It's not a bulletproof formula, but just go the extra mile. Don't just hire anybody because of a price. We do like, I think I do a pretty good job of, like, I have this internal mission of only to do business with good people.
Hmm.
Now, the good thing about that is when you find good people to work with, most of the time they're also hanging out with good people, right?
Right.
So it becomes a little bit easier to find these circles. And I
Yep.
couldn't be more excited about our North Park project. The team that we have on that project, there's 5 partners, and the 5 partners grew organically from our relationship with the townhomes. So I knew this group, Urban Housing Partners, here in San Diego. I've known them for 10 plus years. I'm about to build my very first, call it multifamily project, 10 homes, and Bryan Underwood has never built a home, right? So I went to Urban Housing Partners, a guy specifically named Michael Dunham, and he's built 10,000 units in his life. This guy is like as good as it gets. And I said, Mike, I'm down the rabbit hole on residential, man. I love this stuff. Maybe you'd consider helping me in some capacity. I'm okay making mistakes. I just don't want to make the mistake that totally sinks the ship. And he's like, yeah, let's go. So through that, we met, I'm meeting with him and his 2 team members like twice a week on this project. As we're like getting to know each other even more than we have in a more intimate way, I'm thinking, gosh, guys, we're all out here trying to build projects at the same time. Like, perhaps we consider building 100 units together as a team, as opposed to going and finding another 10 units someplace, right?
Hmm.
And they're like, heck yeah. So that's the group that formed Responsible Urban, are the 5 of us bought this property. And we've raised enough capital to get through building permit, and then we're going to recapitalize with debt and equity for the overall project. But these are the guys that, like, they have the greatest, like, biggest track record here in San Diego, unmatched relationships, and have not done a project on their own. they've always worked for somebody or in a capacity as like a developer, like an owner's rep.
Mhm.
Right. So I'm like, guys, we can do this differently, And so everyone raised their hand. Yeah, let's do it. So, obviously, we're on a mission to let people know that we exist. We're here in San Diego. We've got 100 years collective experience building in San Diego. We got some great, phenomenal projects. We exist and our opportunities are available for investment. That's like, we want people to know like we're here.
Mhm. That's awesome. So yeah, you've formed this new group. Um, Obviously kind of taking your ability to kind of bring the group together. Sounds like maybe raise capital. You've got their experience from a building standpoint. And now you guys are kind of off to the races. And so what does I mean what does it look like in the future for you guys? What are you guys growing into now?
Yeah, so the internal goal is for us to either, have built or in the process of building 1,000 units here in San Diego over the next 5 years. Okay, so that's us doing, if you just break it down, right, two 100-unit projects per year in the pipeline, which I think is
Mhm.
very, very, very achievable. But that's where we want to grow to scale to.
Gotcha. Well, that's exciting. Well, Brian, you've come a long way, obviously, coming from self-storage, wanting to make your mark on the residential space, starting at 10 units. Now you're up to at 89 with 1,000 in your future. So obviously a great growth story. I think it's inspiring to folks. Like you said, I mean, anybody can get started in real estate. You were selling women's shoes, as you said, decided that you wanted to take a different path. And whether it was going to the family business, or I think, a lot of people start small singles duplexes, kind of grow up from there. I think there's a path for everybody, right? And so that's I think that's inspiring. Thanks for sharing your story.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah, I feel like you and I can probably talk for 2 days straight. So it's tough to kind of fit a lot in a short period of time.
Yeah, but I think a lot of understanding of, I mean, I think it's unique talking with folks that are developing in California as well, because there are just such unique circumstances. I mean, it keeps a lot of people out. Like you said, high barriers to entry. A lot of people I know don't want to touch California because of all the regulations, but I think you have a localized knowledge there. You've learned how to work within the system, and that's created like a strategic advantage for you, right? Being able to work
Yeah.
within the regulation and create those relationships. So really unique business plan. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Before we go, I want to take you through our keys to success round. It's 4 questions I want to ask you. The first one is, if you were going to invest in somebody else's deal and somebody else's development, right? And you could only ask them one question, what would that one question be?
So it's a two-part, because I want to understand what the total capital raise is, which of course I read the documents, I would know. But I'd say, if you had the $2.5 million sitting in your bank account, would you put it all in this deal and not need me?
Yeah, interesting. What about what is excuse me,
That's all right.
what are you most proud of in your career?
I'm a I think you have to be an optimist. I'm just a
Mhm.
complete optimist. And so I'm proud that in some of the most daunting and challenging times, I I think, you can ask my business partners, but I think I still have a smile on my face, and I'm looking at, sort of questioning like what's happening. So I think I'm proud that we're always in good spirits because we love what we do, even in what appears to be a really, really, really challenging time. We take it as a challenge, but a challenge that like we can overcome together because we've got a phenomenal team.
Yeah, and I can attest on the development side, there's times where it's very difficult to keep a smile on your face, especially when you're sitting in those meetings and you've got a lot of remonstrators and they're telling you what a bad project you have. because
Yeah,
they
yeah,
don't because they don't want those apartment buildings
absolutely.
in their backyard,
And
right?
yeah,
It
and
can be
and
difficult.
that's before you even broke ground on the project. So I joke, and it's true. I mean, literally, from the time you close your construction loan until the day you get final from the city, there is no good news.
Yeah.
It's no good news. You will not get a phone call saying, guess what just happened? You get a phone call about everything bad.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you just have to know it's coming. You just have to be okay weathering and sort of managing that stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's all about managing through the process, right? You're going to have, especially in development, you're going to have bad things come up. You're going to have problems, that have to be solved. And it's about, as you said, rolling with them, working through them, having a great team around you to be able to brainstorm and solve them, and just move and not getting discouraged and just keep moving forward. Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. That's
absolutely.
exactly right.
What's a book that everybody should read?
Well, absolutely the Bible, um, because I think it's important and we should all be more like Jesus. But second to that is I'm currently reading Never Split the Difference, and think it's a
Mhm.
phenomenal book. And I'm only about halfway through. So I would highly recommend that book.
Yeah, Never Split the Difference is one of my favorites. Read it a couple times, have
Yeah.
it on audiobook. Try to do a
Yeah.
read through at least like once a year because you pick up so much,
My
just
gosh.
great reminders. But yeah, fantastic negotiation book.
Hmm.
Really cool. And then last but not least, what is your number one key to success?
Number one key to success. That's a good one. I mean, I think there's a lot that goes into being successful, but first I think you need to identify what is success to you. Okay. So success to me is actually my family, not necessarily business. And so my number one key to success is communicating with my wife and making sure that we're on the same page and she's calling me out on stuff that I'm short at, and our family is good. Uh that's where I start. I mean,
Yeah.
if that's okay, man, then my business is, trust me, my business is going to be okay, because
Mhm.
so my number one success is communication with my wife.
Well, yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I'm married. I get it. Like if that's not in tune, that stuff can like perforate
For
into
me,
every
oh
part of
yeah,
your life, right? And so I think
absolutely.
that solid family foundation. So congratulations on being a good communicator with your wife, because I think
Oh,
a lot of people
yeah,
find
yeah. No, yeah, it's huge, man. You have to, yeah.
absolutely.
Um, and she, we're a true team. You're married, so you get it. So I may not be the best communicator with her, but we choose to communicate often, right? She'll call
Yeah.
me out. I need a good teammate that holds me accountable. You
Yeah,
know?
that's right. That's right. As we all do, right? It's that give and take,
Yeah,
and you got to be able to hold down your piece of the puzzle, right?
that's
I
right.
mean, I couldn't
Yep,
do what I do without my wife holding down the fort at home
exactly.
and making sure the home front's taken care of. So no,
That's right.
100% get it. Well, awesome, Bryan. Again, thank you so much for coming on today. If folks want to learn more about you and your businesses and responsible real estate and responsible urban, responsible residential, how can they learn more about it?
Sure. Yeah, you can go to my webpage. It's www.investwithbryan.com. Invest with Bryan. It's Bryan with a Y. Investwithbryan.com.
Awesome. We'll make sure that's linked up below. And again, thank you for coming on and have a great rest of the day.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.